How is this campaign and the imagery that you're striving to use, how is that different from what has been done in the past?
We always say internally that, how do we move consumers away from the traditional red barn cows and pasture, right? That there in that still is farming around the country in certain regions, and we should be proud to showcase that. We should also be proud to showcase how the industry and how farms continue to evolve and grow and innovate. And one of the things that we were very cognizant of in going into the See Dairy Differently campaign, when we were thinking about the creative execution of it, is what is that surprising? I did not anticipate that from US Dairy, or I did not anticipate that a dairy farm could look like that, or I did not anticipate that there would be these practices happening across the dairy industry. So our creative look and feel is something that's intended to stop people in their tracks, with bold visuals, with clean white space, but also to your point, that shows, wow, that's a dairy farm. I didn't really think about that, right? Or I didn't think a dairy farm could look like that. So it is really challenging. I would almost say stereotypes of what dairy farming looks like in consumers and thought leaders' minds, and showing them a surprising side of it that they had not expected.
For those that are listening that haven't been able to see any of these ads, if I'm remembering right, one of them actually featured a pile of cow poop, right?
Yes. Yes.
Stopping them in their tracks, I'm sure that might have been one that might have caught the average consumer a little bit off their tracks of why is there cow manure in my magazine? Um, how have the results and the response from some of these ads, how have the results been?
It has been extremely positive. I get to your point, that was the Wired ad that you spoke of. And had you asked me 2 years ago if we would be in a spot as an industry to be placing a full page ad in a high profile magazine about cow poop, I would have said, what? No. But it has, even just that tongue in cheek of speaking about cow manure as groundbreaking technology. People have appreciated the sense of humor. They've appreciated the surprising look in talking about, the other full page ad that we did with the Washington Post had just a beautiful image of a cow, in looking at the camera like this, and it talked about cow power equaling horsepower, and people were like, "Huh, that's interesting." So it's been positively received. I think by the intended end audiences as well as the industry, for standing tall in some of these high profile publications for the work that we are all doing. We've seen a lot of then positive reaction with the digital content that we've put out through social channels. I think that the key average that we look at is it enticing people to click back? We always want to entice people to click back to learn more. And by that, I mean either clicking through to usdairy.com, clicking through to another one of our state and regional sites to learn more. And we've seen time and time again that the content is inspiring them to do exactly that. I want to say we've had, over 200,000 clicks back to content where they can learn more. And once they are going back to the websites, or they're going to the other areas, a media article, for example, they're spending significant time on that site reading through the information. So that just shows us that there's an interest in learning more. And if we have the right content for them to learn more, they're engaging with it in different ways.
USA Today, Time Magazine, Wired, these are not necessarily your traditional farmer magazines. In our industry, we all tend to like to amplify or support what information is being put out. How, as dairy farmers, can we amplify or be part of this campaign?
I think a couple things come to my mind. One, first and foremost, the biggest thing that I would encourage all dairy farmers to do is to find ways to tell your story locally, and work with your state and regional teams to do that. It is, yes, amplification of content that we put out there, but the biggest thing that we see time and time again, and you said with your visitor center, is you all telling your story to local consumers, local media, local thought leaders. That's the power that we need to scale the impact when we think about building dairy's reputation and building trust and continuing to build that with consumers. I think on our side, when we have a strong piece of earned media content, for example, or this Time Magazine media partnership, or some of the things that the state and regions do locally, making sure that you all are aware of it, right? So that to your point, if you have a social channel and you want to be able to amplify it, that is something that we're looking to continue to increase our efforts working with our farmer relations teams on, so that as something is earned. For example, I would say we had an article last year in Green Biz, again, another unsuspecting place for US dairy to be. That was something that we amplified and made sure that it got additional scale and reach. Your point is well taken on how do we make sure that we're working then to get that to all of you as dairy farmers, so that if you want to share it, you have that ability to do so. So note taken for me in terms of activations for this year, and working closely with our state and region teams to make sure that we are sharing those content articles with you so that you can all amplify those as well.
That's really good to hear, because I'll be on the lookout for those. Um, this is still a relatively new campaign for the dairy community. Where do you see the See Dairy Differently campaign going in the future? And will it evolve beyond a lot of the print ads we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I am really excited to see where we take it this year. We've already seen, we're working towards new creative executions for this year related to telling dairy's environmental sustainability story and featuring that in creative and fun ways. I would also say we're looking at this idea of seeing dairy differently from a nutritional and wellness standpoint. So a lot of work has gone in over the last year through research to look at what is dairy's role in modern health and wellness areas that consumers care about. So gut health, cognition, graceful aging, as we call it. And there's a lot of great science out there that shows dairy's role in some of these modern wellness territories where consumers are wanting to explore. And so one of the ideas that we've kicked around, because when we came up with See Dairy Differently, I was very keen on making sure that it was a concept that could extend beyond environment sustainability. So how do I get a consumer or a thought leader to think about dairy differently in the context of its ability for gut health, right? There's a myth out there that dairy causes gut inflammation or it causes digestive issues, when in reality, the science shows that it actually benefits gut health. So can we take See Dairy Differently and inspire consumers and others to think about dairy in a different light when it comes to a food that they could consume to benefit their health and wellness long term? So that is something that we're exploring this year in terms of what is that nutritional wellness angle to See Dairy Differently. So more to come on that. And then I think continuing to work with our state and regional teams to identify maybe some high profile ways that we could execute See Dairy Differently together, either experiential and or other activations. I would say See Dairy Differently will come to life at Green Biz Verge, which is a big sustainability conference each year held out in California. We had an activation last year, a bigger booth presence, and I will say, lines were out the door. We actually brought a couple of dairy farmers to talk to people at Green Biz Verge, and I felt bad because the lines were really long to talk to the dairy farmers that we brought. So more to come on that. But again, it's showing up in those unexpected places where people don't expect dairy to be. And then having a conversation and being able to share the work that's happening on farms across the country.
I look forward to watching all this unfold, and I really hope to see continued success with that campaign. But before we wrap up, Heather, is there anything more that you'd like to share that you want to just ensure that our listeners, our dairy farmer listeners today, make sure they hear?
Yeah, I would also highlight, well, we have See Dairy Differently, and that's been a great execution for us. Another campaign that I would want to highlight because it's been so successful is we actually last fall targeted those eco-conscious Gen Z consumers with a campaign called A Farmer's More Than a Farmer. And that was branded under the Undeniably Dairy logo. It showed up in streaming Hulu, so streaming platforms, as well as digital channels. And we had a media partnership with Vox, which is a media outlet that's very popular with younger audiences. And we just got the results back from that. It was essentially 3 different executions that featured a dairy farm and farmers out in California, but talked about water conservation, recycling water up to 4 times on average on the majority of dairy farms across the country. It talked about cow feed and nutrition and being able to take care of the cows and ensure that they're well fed. And it also highlighted different technology and practices. In this case, it was a solar field panel that is enabling us to continue to find new ways of energy to power dairy farms. And those simple executions, it was phenomenal to see that amongst consumers who saw the creative, their perceptions of dairy increased across a number of different metrics by 5 to 11 points. So it just shows, again, taking a simple story, making sure that we put farmers front and center in the creative to tell your story really truly works. And it was so successful that we're looking at how do we run that campaign again next month for Earth Month. So that'll be an exciting execution. I will also say stay tuned. We have a brand new partnership, that a creative storytelling project that we are launching with Milk Pep in April, that will feature prominent celebrity talent. And we've had that celebrity talent go visit a dairy farm for a week in New York. And so she learned all about dairy farming sustainability and animal and cow care. She got to visit a processing plant, etc. So that's going to be a really fun 5-part docuseries that will be launching next month, time to Earth Day, to really engage consumers in the conversation and do so in a way that's fun for them as well. And then I would just continue to highlight, sustainability, telling dairy's story. It is not an either or between health and wellness or environment, continues to be a prime focus, working with cultural influencers, social and digital channels. And again, we could not do it without our state and regional partners. So lots of exciting things planned across the year, both nationally and locally, and look forward to sharing the results with all of you.
Heather,